Every morning, millions of people face their reflections without questioning what stares back at them. I was once like them, until my mirror betrayed me. What began as subtle discrepancies evolved into a terrifying exploration of identity, where the glass surface became a portal to something far more sinister than a simple reflection. The first signs, my bathroom mirror had never been remarkable, just a rectangle of glass hanging above the sink. The first time it happened, I was applying face lotion in dimly lit conditions. Something about my reflection seemed off. Though I could see my outline, I couldn't quite recognize the face staring back. My eyes appeared unnaturally large, and a strange feeling crept over me, as if something lurked just behind my reflected self. I dismissed it as a trick of poor lighting and discovered this experience has a scientific name: the strange face illusion. Studies show that when people stare at their reflection under low lighting, they often perceive bizarre distortions of their own features. Yet knowing the mechanism behind the strange face illusion did little to diminish its deeply unsettling effect. Something about seeing your own face transform feels profoundly wrong. Over subsequent days, I became increasingly aware of subtle differences, changes that occurred even under normal lighting. My reflection seemed slightly delayed, as if lagging behind my movements by a tiny fraction of a second. On another day, my mirror image appeared to blink a moment after I did. Most concerning, these anomalies grew more pronounced. I found that the longer I stared, the more my reflection seemed to develop a presence independent from my own. Sometimes my reflection's mouth would widen imperceptibly more than my own, showing too many teeth. Other times its features would subtly rearrange themselves when viewed from the corner of my eye. The most disturbing aspect wasn't the visual changes, but rather the emotional response they triggered. I experienced an unshakable feeling that something was observing me through the mirror's surface. By the end of the week, the boundaries between my movements and those of my reflection had blurred considerably. I began to question which of us was initiating the movements and which was following, testing reality. Desperation drove me to more systematic examinations. I placed a small dot of lipstick on my forehead without looking, then approached the mirror. Logically, upon seeing the mark, I should reach to touch my own forehead. However, something inexplicable happened. My reflection touched its forehead before I moved. By the time my hand reached my face, the mark had already disappeared from my reflection, though it remained on my actual skin. Next, I tried making sudden, unpredictable gestures. On 3 separate occasions, my reflection anticipated my movements, beginning its motion a fraction of a second before I did. Most alarmingly, when I deliberately chose not to complete a planned movement, my reflection sometimes finished it anyway. One evening, while conducting a mirror-gazing test, I whispered, "Who are you?" To my horror, my reflection's lips moved slightly differently than my own, forming what appeared to be different words. Though no sound came from the mirror, I felt certain it had responded with, "Who are you?" I immersed myself in mirror-related folklore, searching for explanations beyond modern psychology. Beliefs about mirrors as portals or gateways to other worlds appear across numerous cultures. Ancient Romans believed mirrors contained fragments of one's soul. The Chinese conceived of mirrors as tools that could reveal one's true nature or even trap evil spirits. Mirrors feature prominently in death-related customs worldwide. In Victorian England, people covered mirrors after a death to prevent the deceased spirit from becoming trapped. Jewish tradition includes covering mirrors during mourning periods. Many cultures believe that mirrors should be covered in sick rooms, as the soul is more vulnerable to possession during illness. Most unsettling was discovering ancient Chinese mythology referenced by Jorge Luis Borges, which told of fish-like creatures visible as flashes of light in the corner of one's eyes when looking at mirrors. These entities supposedly act as gatekeepers between worlds. The entity emerges within a week. The boundary separating me from my reflection had deteriorated dramatically. One evening, as I stood brushing my teeth, my reflection suddenly stopped moving. Despite my continued brushing motion, the figure in the mirror remained perfectly still, eyes fixed directly on me. Soon these independent actions became more frequent and deliberate. My reflection would blink when I didn't, smile slightly when my face remained neutral, tilt its head curiously as if studying me. In one particularly horrifying instance, I raised my hand to adjust my collar. Simultaneously, my reflection raised its hand to its neck, but then continued moving upward to touch its face, while I had already lowered mine. Subsequently, the anomalies transcended mere visual disturbances. The air directly in front of my bathroom mirror would suddenly become noticeably colder. I began sensing what many describe as feelings of a presence near the mirror, even when I wasn't looking directly at it. Eventually, tangible evidence emerged. One morning, I discovered small handprints on the mirror's surface, slightly smaller than my own, though I lived alone and had no visitors. While standing near the mirror, I occasionally felt what seemed like light touches on my shoulders or back. Most alarmingly, I began noticing objects in my apartment subtly rearranged after spending time near the mirror. Keys moved to different locations, books opened to specific pages, and once, a note written in handwriting eerily similar to my own, but with slight differences, suggesting that whatever existed on the other side of the glass was gaining influence beyond its reflective prison. Worlds collide. The final confrontation came on a moonless night when my reflection refused to mimic my retreat from the bathroom mirror. As I stepped backward, it remained in place, pressing what should have been ghostly hands against the glass surface. I watched in horror as the glass began to liquefy under its touch. The surface rippled like disturbed water, and I felt myself being pulled forward by an invisible force. Half my body passed through before I managed to grasp the doorframe. I found myself trapped, partially in my bathroom and partially in an inverted world where everything appeared as a mirror image of my own reality. In this liminal space between worlds, I understood why ancient cultures saw mirrors as portals. I wasn't experiencing a psychological phenomenon. I was literally caught between realities. As I struggled against the pull, my reflection revealed its true nature. What gazed back wasn't me, but something that had been studying me, learning my movements until it could execute them perfectly. This entity existed in what scientists might call a dark mirror universe, a parallel reality with its own laws of physics and inhabitants. Throughout my ordeal, my every movement had strengthened this connection, gradually allowing this entity access to our world. Through sheer desperation, I wrenched myself free, shattering the mirror. Each fragment continued to show not my reflection, but the creature's independent form, trapped once more, but now watching me from multiple angles. The aftermath. My shattered mirror now serves as both evidence and prison, each fragment containing a piece of that other dimensional being. Still, questions haunt me. How many others have faced their reflections only to discover something else staring back? What happens when these entities successfully cross over? Perhaps most chilling, which side of the mirror do I truly belong to now? Remember, mirrors don't always reflect reality. Sometimes they reveal truths far more terrifying than any distorted image. Next time you face your reflection, look carefully. That subtle delay in movement, that slight misalignment of expression might signal something watching from the other side of the glass.